Okay, let's go over the equations and inequalities homework. The first side, we're dealing with one-step equations, two-step and multi-step. And I'm going to zoom in so it's a little easier to see what I'm doing. With this top section, one-step equations, all you need to worry about is getting the variable by itself. And that's going to include just one movement. So here we need to subtract that 8. We need to get it away from the v. So we're going to do it over here as well. Remember, you got to keep it balanced. Whatever you do to one side, you've got to do to the other. So with 8 minus 8, that's 0. 0 plus v is v. And 26 minus 8 is 18. So that's your answer. When you get the variable by itself, you don't need to go any further. If we look at number 2, we see, okay, a variable, and we've got something near the variable, so we need to get rid of it. So we're going to take it away. But whatever we do to one side, we have to do to the other. And we're left with p equals 5. Okay. Number 3, 15 plus b equals 23. Again, we got the b right here. We have to get it all by itself. So we're going to take away anything that's around it. But like a scale, we got to make sure it stays balanced on both sides. So 15 minus 15 is 0. 0 plus b is b. 23 minus 15 is 8. Okay, so b is 8. Remember to circle your answers when you're done. Okay. Now, let's get this away. Now, we do the opposite of whatever sign it tells us. So here it's a negative 15, so we're going to add 15. Add 15. And we're left with n, because negative 15 plus 15 is 0. 0 plus n is n. Negative 9 plus 15 is 6. And feel free to use a calculator on those to make sure you get them right, so that you get the negatives and the positives right. Let's go down to the two steps. Now the two-step equations require a little bit more, and you'll see they even have fractions in them. Fractions aren't very complicated. You just got to remember two steps to getting rid of the fraction with a variable in it. The first step is to get the fraction by itself. So here's our fraction. We don't care what's inside the fraction, just that it's a fraction. So we need to get it by itself. So we're going to minus 2, and we're left with 4 equals a over 4. Okay, that's an a, not a 9. My a's look like 9s. Step 2 is to multiply by the denominator. Our denominator here is a 4, so we're going to multiply by 4. Both sides. Don't forget, you have to do it to both sides. That gets rid of this piece right here, and we're left with 4 times 4 over here is 16 equals, and then the only thing left here is a. And that's the answer. So if we move on to 2, we also see a fraction here, so we need to get the fraction alone. We have a negative 6. How do we clear that out? We do the opposite, so we have plus 6, and we're left with 0 plus the fraction, which is x over 4, equals negative 5 plus 6 is 1. Now we need to clear the fraction. Step 2 is clear the fraction by multiplying by the denominator. Our denominator is 4, so we're going to multiply by 4, both sides. The 4's cancel out, and we're left with x equals 1 times 4 is 4. Okay, number 3. 9x minus 7 equals negative 7. Okay, we need to get the x by itself, so we're going to add 7 to both sides. We need to add 7 because that's a minus 7, and we do the opposite of whatever it says. So on this side, we're left with just 9x equals, and negative 7 plus 7 is 0. Now we're going to divide by 9, x equals 0 divided by 9 is 0. And 0 is a perfectly reasonable answer. Okay. Number 4. We have a fraction. So now we have 2 steps to solve this. One is get the fraction all by itself. So we're going to minus 4, minus 4. We do it to both sides. And we have negative 4 equals just the fraction left, n over 5. Now step 2 is to clear that fraction out. To do that, we're just going to multiply by 5. Multiply by 5. We have to do it to both sides. Those cancel out. We're left with just n over here. And negative 4 times 5 is negative 20. And that's the answer to number 4. Okay. Now, as we move down to these multi-step equations, they have a little more to them, but they're not too bad. Here, for example, if we have negative 4x's and negative 6x's, let's just for now pretend those negatives aren't there. If we have just 4x's and 6x's, how many x's do we have? We have 10 x's. Well, now just put the negative on both of them. Negative 4x's and negative 6x's are negative 10 x's equals negative 20. So we're just combining like terms. If they're the same on the same side, you can just combine them. Now we got to divide by negative 10 to get the x by itself. And we're left with x equals 2. Okay. Number 2. We look and we only have one variable. We need all the variables on the left. Right now it's on the right, so, and I say all on the left because it's a negative variable. If you see that right there, it's a negative 2n. Well, I like positive variables, so I'm going to add 2n to both sides. And now I have 6 plus 2n, because I can't put them together. One has an n, one doesn't, equals, and what's 1 plus 5? That's 6. Okay, now I'm going to subtract 6 minus 6, because we got to get the n by itself, and we're left with 2n equals 0. Then I'm going to divide by 2, n equals 0. Okay, number 3. I have x's on both sides. I don't want that, so I only want x's on the left. So we're just going to subtract 7x over here and get rid of the x's over there. But like a scale, we got to do the same thing to both sides. That's the only way we can keep it balanced. 8x's, take away 7x's, leaves us with just 1x. Minus 2 equals negative 9, because that's now gone. Okay, now we're going to add 2. We're left with x equals negative 7. Okay, remember, negative plus a positive, you know, use a calculator if you need to. And number 4. Again, we have the a on both sides, so I'm just going to get rid of this one by doing the opposite of whatever it says, plus 5a, plus 5a. Okay, remember, you got to do it to both sides. Now that goes away, and I'm left with just a positive 5 over there. And over here, I have 6a plus 5. Now I want to get rid of that, so I'm going to minus 5, and I'm left with 6a equals 0. Divide by 6, because we're trying to get the a by itself, and we're left with a equals 0. Because 0 divided by 6 is 0. So that's how you do the first side. Now the second side, we're dealing with inequalities. Okay. Now the top side has already been done for you, has already been simplified for you. However, number 1 is a typo. So you do not need to do number 1. Just go ahead and cross off number 1. You don't need to do it. Okay. Number 2. N is less than or equal to 5. Now if you remember, an open circle means included, or not included, excuse me, not included. And a filled in circle means it's included. That's just like saying less than without the equal sign, and this is saying less than with the equal sign. Okay, so if you have anything that says equal in it, equal means it's included. Okay, so in this case, we have n is less than or equal to 5. I have the word equal, so I know it's a filled in circle. Okay, because it's equal, it's filled in. So on the 5, I'm just going to create a filled in circle and make it big enough so that you can see it, just like that. Now with variable or with inequalities, you've always got to make sure that the n or the variable is always on the left. Okay, that's just a setup that you've always got to make sure. In this case, it's on the left. So which way do I draw the arrows? Well, n is less than or equal to 5. Less than is to the left. But also notice that if I say less than, like right here, I can make that look like a little arrow. Okay, so that's telling me I got to shade in this direction. Okay, it doesn't have to be perfectly neat as long as I know where you're shading. Okay, x is less than 1. It is not equal to, which means 1 is not included. So I've got an open circle, and my little arrow is pointing to the left. So I'm going to shade to the left, just like that. Okay, r is greater than 2. It is not including 2, so it does not equal 2. So I'm going to do a hollow circle, and it's greater than, so I'm shading to the right. Or if you look at the arrow, which way is it pointing? It's pointing towards the right, like that. And so I'm going to shade to the right. Okay, number 5. N is greater than 5. Not equal to, so it's a hollow circle, and it's pointing to the right, so I'm going to shade to the right because it's greater than. And number 6, r is less than or equal to -2. Less than or equal to, which means it includes -2. So I'm going to do a solid circle, and it's pointing to the left, so my arrow will point to the left because I'm shading everything less than that circle. Just like that. Now down to the two-step inequalities, I got to get x by itself, and I have to have x on the left, but do that right at the end there. Here, I've got x minus 7, so I'm going to add 7. Add 7. -12 plus 7 is -5. Is greater than x. And I don't need to flip the sign because I just added. You only flip the sign when you have a multiply or divide by a negative number. Okay? But I need that flipped over. Okay? I need to make that x on the left. So right now it's pointing at the x. See how it points at the x? The answer, or when I flip it, it still needs to point there. So I'm going to have the x on this side. It needs to point to the x, -5. Okay, so x is less than -5. I just put the x over here, flip that, and put the -5 over there. So it's like a big transparency that I just picked it up, flipped it over, put it back down. Okay, so it's just like flipping it over. X is less than -5, so we're going to find -5. It is not equal to, so I'm doing a hollow circle. It's pointing to the left, so I will shade to the left. Okay, number 2. -1 plus r is greater than or equal to 4. So I need to get the r by itself. So I'm going to add 1 to both sides. Now I have r is greater than or equal to 5. The r is on the left. It's a positive, so we can just shade it. Okay. Now it's pointing to the right like that, so I need to shade everything to the right. But it has this equal sign here too, which means it's a filled in circle. And then we shade everything to the right. Okay. Number 3. N minus 6 is less than or equal to negative 14. I'm going to add 6 to get the n by itself. I'm left with n is less than or equal to negative 14 plus 6, negative 8. Okay, now the n is on the left, and so I don't need to worry about switching anything. It's an equal to, so I know it's a filled in circle, and I'm going to fill it in at negative 8. Okay, and it's pointing to the left, telling me to shade in everything less than, so I'm going to shade to the left. Okay, number 4. B minus 7 is less than 12. We're going to add 7. Add 7. We have B is less than negative 5. Watch your negatives and positives. There's no equal sign, so I know that's going to be a hollow circle, and it's pointing to the left, saying to shade everything less than. So I'm going to shade everything less than. Okay. Number 5. I'm going to add 2. Now I have negative b is greater than 10. Now here's the problem with this one. It has a negative b. We can't have a negative b. So we have to switch the sign. That's the exact same thing as multiplying by a negative 1. Okay? All you have to remember though is just switch the sign, make that a positive b, not 6. Just make that a positive b, and then switch everything else. We're going to switch the sign so it's now less than instead of greater than, and it's negative 10. Okay? Once we've switched everything, now we can say, all right, we go to negative 10, it's a hollow circle, and it's everything less than. And that's how you do that one. By switching the sign, that's the same thing as multiplying both sides by a negative 1. And remember, when you multiply by a negative, you have to flip the sign. Or if you just want to remember, hey, I just got to change the sign, change the sign, change the sign, if that makes sense. Okay, let's look here. This one's a little harder, only because it's asking us to distribute first. Negative 4 times 3 is negative 12. Negative 4 plus n is negative 4n is greater than negative 32. And there are different ways to solve that. You could divide by negative 4 first and then solve down, but we're just going to get used to doing distribution. So now I'm going to add 12, and I'm left with negative 4n is greater than negative 20. Now I have to divide by a negative. Now you got to be careful. When you divide by a negative, you got to switch the sign. So divide by a negative. Now I have n, and I switch the sign, is now less than, not greater than, 5. Because negative 20 divided by negative 4 is 5. So it's less than, so it's a hollow, and the arrow's pointing to the left, like that. You know, picture that's an arrow. And so I'm going to shade everything to the left. And there you are. So that's how you do the homework. I hope this helps. If you have any questions, please let me know right away.